Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into the stream, looking at what's buzzing right now on the X platform. We've got a snapshot here, kind of a vibe check on the digital world.
Exactly. And these aren't just random posts. We're talking about things that tap into bigger stories, technology, the economy, politics.
Right. So our goal today is to go beyond just the headlines. We want to connect the dots for you, give you that extra context.
Find those little nuggets of knowledge hidden in the scroll. We'll cover some fascinating tech stuff, some economic news that might surprise you, and yeah, definitely some political and social commentary worth digging into.
Okay, let's get started. First up, tech and innovation. This one from @PicturesFoider. Wow, it just says, someone explain what this person is doing, and there's this video.
Oh, I saw that one, yeah.
It's this machine. It looks like an excavator, but it's just slicing through trees like butter. What is that?
Yeah, it's pretty striking. What you're seeing there is an excavator, but it's got a special attachment, a hydraulic tree shear. It's designed specifically for cutting down trees and removing stumps really, really quickly.
Okay, so it's for clearing land fast. Where would you use something like that?
Well, based on the context, it's likely being used to clear out non-productive trees, probably on an oil palm plantation. It's all about efficiency in agriculture.
Efficiency, right.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing that kind of speed, it makes you think, doesn't it, about the bigger picture?
Absolutely. That's the real insight here. This tech highlights that tension,
Yeah.
The drive for efficiency in, say, palm oil production versus the environmental costs, deforestation, habitat loss. It's a huge debate, especially in places like Malaysia and Indonesia. This machine is kind of a symbol of that whole conflict.
Okay, shifting gears but staying with big tech. This headline from @UnusualWhales, breaking. Microsoft, MSFT, to lay off 9,000 workers. 9,000, that's a lot of people.
It is a huge number. This was announced July 2nd, 2025. It works out to about 4% of their global workforce.
So what's driving it? Is it just cost-cutting, or is there something bigger going on?
It seems to be more strategic than just simple cost-cutting. The report suggests it's directly linked to a massive investment push into AI infrastructure. We're talking possibly $80 billion in capital spending planned for the next fiscal year just on AI.
80 billion. Wow. So they're really going all in on AI. Does that mean cuts in other areas, like gaming?
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a major pivot. It seems to connect with other recent moves, like canceling the Everwild game project, which had been in development for years, and around 200 job cuts hit the Xbox division, including places like King and ZeniMax.
So less focus on gaming, more on AI. That's a big shift.
It really is. And, it also brings up that whole debate around H-1B visas. Some reports, like one from Bloomberg, pointed out potential wage differences for contractors versus full-time employees in these kinds of situations. Adds another layer to the story.
Okay, from huge corporate moves to, well, this sounds almost like a caper. We've got posts from 0xGot saying they found him, and then at Suhail with, not a joke, this is happening real time. This is the third DM today about someone firing him. Sohamgate. What on earth is Sohamgate?
Right. It sounds like something out of a movie. So this revolves around an Indian tech worker named Soham Parekh. The allegation is that he was somehow managing to hold down multiple full-time remote jobs at different startups at the same time.
Multiple jobs? Simultaneously how?
Apparently, potentially using a, let's say, enhanced resume. Then Suhail Doshi, who's a well-known founder, put out a public warning about him, and things moved incredibly fast.
So what happened?
Doshi's post basically triggered a cascade. Multiple companies reportedly realized they all employed this same guy, and according to Suhail's post, several fired him on the very same day. It unfolded in real time on X.
That is wild. So is this just one person pulling a fast one, or does it say something more about, vetting processes in tech, especially with remote work?
I think it definitely raises questions. It's kind of a wake-up call about trust and verification when everyone's remote. How well are companies actually checking backgrounds? There's a study back in 2018 from Santa Clara University that found many tech firms didn't have super robust ethical screening. And then another study, I think it was IEE in 2023, noted a jump 30% in identity fraud in remote tech hiring since 2020. So this Sohamgate might be an extreme example, but it taps into a real vulnerability. It even echoes some of those reports about large-scale job scams, like the ones operating out of Cambodia. It's about the integrity of the hiring process in this digital age.
Fascinating and a bit scary. Okay, let's go from digital intrigue to outer space. We've got Elon Musk posting from @ElonMusk, 29 landings of single booster, and that SpaceX followed up. Falcon fleet leader touches down for its 29th launch and landing. 29 times for one booster.
Yeah, it's genuinely remarkable. This is SpaceX's Falcon 9 booster, specifically B1067, completing its 29th successful launch and landing.
Why is that such a big deal? I mean, we know they land rockets now, right?
Right, but 29 times for the same booster really pushes the envelope. It proves just how viable and effective reusable rocket technology has become. It used to be thought almost impossible, or at least wildly impractical. This booster has flown some major missions too, Crew 3, Crew 4, lots of Starlink satellites.
So the more they reuse them, the cheaper it gets to launch things. Is that the idea?
That's exactly the core idea. It drastically reduces the cost of access to space. SpaceX is apparently aiming to certify these boosters for up to 40 flights eventually. Imagine the possibilities that opens up. And you see their impact globally too, like Starlink getting regulatory clearance recently in India. It's all connected to making space more accessible.
40 flights. Incredible. Okay, sticking with disruptive ideas, let's talk about money. Michael Saylor from @Saylor put out a really bold statement. Bitcoin is money. Everything else is credit.
Yes, Saylor doesn't mince words, does he? That's a very strong maximalist position on Bitcoin.
What's the context there? He's heavily invested.
Oh, massively. His company, MicroStrategy, has poured over $14 billion into buying Bitcoin. They hold something like 500,000 Bitcoins now. And it's paid off for their stock price. It's up like 500% since they started buying in 2020. So his statement reflects that deep conviction and, frankly, his success with that strategy.
So he sees Bitcoin as the ultimate store of value, separate from the traditional financial system.
Pretty much. He's arguing it's fundamental money, whereas traditional currencies and assets are essentially forms of credit with counterparty risk. You can see the appeal, especially when you look at Bitcoin's price history, from basically $1 in 2011 to over $60,000 by mid-2025. And some studies, like one in the Journal of Risk and Financial Management, have linked its volatility to things like the US dollar dropping recently.
But there are risks, obviously.
Bank risks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the crucial counterpoint. While it has this ideological appeal, especially when traditional currencies fluctuate, you can't ignore the regulatory scrutiny. Its use in illicit activities is well documented. The IMF wrote about this in 2022. So Saylor's statement is powerful, it drives debate, but it definitely simplifies a very complex picture. There's the promise, and then there are the very real practical and regulatory challenges.
Right. Okay, let's shift from the digital and financial world to the broader economy. We've got some buzz around the latest jobs report picked up by posts from @Atrupar and @Krasenstein. And the news seems unexpected.
Yeah, definitely unexpected. The U.S. private sector jobs report for June 2025 came in, and instead of the gain, everyone was predicting somewhere around 95,000 to 100,000 jobs.
It went down.
It went down, a decline of 33,000 private sector jobs. And that's significant because it's the first actual drop in private payrolls in over 2 years, going back to March 2023.
Wow. So what does that signal? Is the economy slowing down more than people thought?
It certainly suggests a cooling in the labor markets. There were still gains in some sectors, like construction, but we saw noticeable drops in areas like professional and business services, and also in education and healthcare.
And the timing is interesting too, isn't it? Didn't President Trump's big tax and spending bill just pass the Senate?
Exactly. It passed very narrowly, and now this jobs report comes out showing a decline. It complicates the narrative a bit about the bill's immediate economic impact. It fits with some broader research, like from the Stanford Digital Economy Lab, suggesting the labor market is cooling. And of course, it immediately leads to more calls for the Federal Reserve to maybe cut interest rates, especially with all the political pressure.
Yeah, complicated indeed. Okay, let's wade into the political arena now. There's been a lot of talk about the big, beautiful bill. We're seeing posts all over about it, from Analysis, @JD Vance, @Democratic Wins, @Colin Rugg. What's the core conflict here?
Okay, yeah, this bill has generated a ton of debate from all sides. Let's try to unpack it.
Please do.
So on the opposition side, you have someone like Representative Thomas Massey, highlighted by Analysis. Massey claimed he had the votes to actually defeat the bill in the House, his main issue, the deficit.
The deficit, okay. How much are we talking?
The estimate is it could add something like $4.7 trillion to the deficit over 10 years. Massey's argument, and that of other fiscal conservatives, is that it includes things like tax cuts benefiting the wealthy and increased defense spending, while also proposing cuts to programs like Medicaid and SNP. Massey's always been focused on the debt, so this fits his record.
But obviously there are strong supporters too. like J.D. Vance.
Right. At J.D. Vance posted celebrating it as a major win. He linked it back to earlier legislation, H.R. 1, arguing it's designed to pump trillions into the U.S. economy and spur growth.
Okay, but is the economy actually reflecting that kind of growth right now?
Well, that's the counterpoint. The Bureau of Economic Analysis data showed GDP growth actually slowed down a bit in the second quarter of 2025 to 1.8%. And then there's the issue of tariffs mentioned in the bill. They might raise government revenue, sure, but they could also mean higher prices for consumers. It's that classic trade-off. Vance also used it to critique Biden's economic record, though other reports, like one from NBER, credit the previous administration with stabilizing unemployment. So, competing narratives there.
And it sounds like there was some real last-minute drama getting the votes. The Democratic wins reported panic at the White House and Speaker Johnson's office.
Oh, yeah, definitely some legislative scrambling. Speaker Mike Johnson has a very narrow Republican majority in the House, so losing even a few votes is a big deal. Reports suggested they were really struggling to lock down support ahead of the July 4th deadline. You also had other criticisms swirling. Senator Warren raised concerns, unverified, about potential healthcare losses for millions, and the GAO flagged potential fraud risks in some emergency funding aspects. Lots of moving parts.
And then, right in the middle of all this high-stakes voting, we get Representative Nancy Mace showing up in her pajamas. At Colin Rugg captured that. What was that about?
Yeah, that was quite the visual. Apparently, her flight back to D.C. was canceled due to bad weather, but she was determined to get there for the vote. So she flew in, rushed to the Capitol, and voted, still in her PJs. She framed it as, come hell or high water, showing dedication.
So was it a genuine display of commitment or maybe a bit of political theater? Or both?
Probably a healthy dose of both, wouldn't you say? It's definitely political theater, a way to grab attention and craft a narrative about her dedication. It's personal branding meets legislative duty. Yeah. But it also walks that line, you know? Some people see it as relatable and committed. Others might see it as a bit frivolous, given the seriousness of the legislation. It definitely got people talking, which was likely the point.
Definitely got people talking. Okay, let's shift from political theater to a different kind of viral moment, this one involving personal safety. At Terrible 808, posted a video asking, was this dog's reaction justified? It shows a woman with her dog being approached by a man.
Right, I saw this one. It shows a woman walking her dog, looks like a Dutch Shepherd, and a man approaches her. She clearly indicates she doesn't want to interact, but he keeps pushing, gets quite persistent, maybe even inappropriate.
And the dog reacts.
Yeah, the dog starts growling, showing its teeth. It places itself between the man and the woman. The question posed was whether that reaction was justified.
So what's the verdict? Knowing the breed, was it justified?
Well, Dutch Shepherds are known for being very intelligent, alert, and protective of their owners. Given the context, the man's persistence, the owner's discomfort, the dog perceiving a potential threat and reacting defensively is entirely consistent with its breed traits and likely training. So yeah, most would argue the dog's reaction was a justified protective measure.
It really highlights a bigger issue too, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It taps right into the pervasive problem of street harassment and concerns about personal safety, particularly for women in public spaces. Law enforcement guidelines, like those from the College of Policing, actually categorize that kind of persistent, unwanted attention as harassment or even stalking. The dog basically acted as a deterrent in a threatening situation.
Okay, let's end things on a lighter, more athletic note. This one from @DudesPostingWs. Dude invented a new sliding technique. Sile. It's a baseball clip. How do you invent a new slide?
Right. Baseball seems like a sport where everything's been done. But this clip shows Chase DeLauter, an outfielder for the Chicago White Sox, doing something pretty unique, sliding into second base.
What did he do?
Instead of a standard slide, he sort of stopped short, almost like hitting the brakes right before the bag, causing the fielder trying to tag him to completely miss. Then he reached back and touched the base safely. It was incredibly agile and required amazing body control and awareness.
Whoa. So pure improvisation to avoid the tag.
Exactly. It was quick thinking, innovation on the fly. You really don't see moves like that often. It wasn't just athletic. It was smart base running.
Could that actually, catch on, become a thing?
You know, maybe. It's the kind of play that gets coaches and players thinking. It shows there's always room for creativity and strategy, even in a game as established as baseball. Definitely a cool moment of athletic ingenuity.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay. So we've really bounced around today, haven't we? From tree-cutting machines and AI layoffs to Bitcoin declarations, job numbers, intense political maneuvering, pajama-clad voting, protective dogs, and inventive baseball slides.
We certainly covered a lot of ground.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you listening in?
I think the main thing is seeing how all these different posts, these trending moments, even though they seem totally disconnected, actually weave together. They give you this real-time, unfiltered glimpse into what's shaping a technology, the economy, our social interactions, even politics.
Right, it's not just noise if you know how to listen, how to connect the pieces.
Exactly. Hopefully this deep dive helps you filter that stream a bit, find the context, and turn that everyday scroll into something more like genuine understanding. Because, information is one thing, but perspective, that's where the real value is.
Well said. So as we finish up today, here's something to think about. How many of these moments we talked about, these things trending today, are actually signals of much bigger, longer-term shifts happening underneath the surface? What clues will tomorrow's trending topics give us about where things are really heading?